So let's look at ambition and purpose. And so this is going to be very similar to grandiosity, except it's going to be grandiosity without pride. So in life, we got to have some kind of overall direction that we're going. There's a very common problem that life feels meaningless, which who knows, maybe it is metaphysically meaningless or some shit, but you can give it meaning by recognizing that the things that you do are going to affect the people around you. The people around you are conscious, most likely conscious beings like you that experience things. And if you can dedicate your life in some way to making the conscious experience of as many people as possible a bit better, then you've got some degree of meaning. And that can be in big ways or in small ways. And whether it's big or small isn't important, because the process is what you're going to be engaging with. And if it ends up being something big, then you just happen to be engaging in the process properly with circumstances that allow you to do a lot of good, which is great. But if you don't have those circumstances that allow you to create some massive change, that doesn't matter, because you're still engaging in the same process. And another aspect of humility is recognizing that the only difference between your ultimate good and somebody else's ultimate good is the circumstances in which you're engaging in the process. But the ultimate goal is to be able to engage in the process effectively. And by process, I'm not only referring to the processes that we've discussed throughout this course. There are many other processes. This is actually probably going to be another one. Many processes that we have to go through in life, and there are proper and improper ways to go about those processes. I don't know which one it is. So, for example, the cognitive triangle. You can think there's a productive way for the cognitive triangle to occur, and there's an unproductive way. And a part of self-development and knowledge and research is going to be learning how to go about life, or at least go about the process of life properly. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is conceptualize the highest possible good that you could possibly do. And that's going to be a little bit grandiose, and it's okay if that's a bit grandiose. And you're going to want to reconceptualize that at the end of what we're going to go over in a second, is at the end of each era. So that's going to be some kind of more far off, distant way that you might be able to better the world. And a great, if you want to look at that idea more, a fantastic resource for that is a book called Mastery by Robert Greene. Looking at it, it's a very thick book. You can make a whole course about this topic, but figuring out what your life's task is requires, well, it's a process in itself, and you want to go about that process properly. So check out that book. But ambition is going to be first recognizing whatever that is, and then not trying to attain it. Because if you go straight into trying to attain it, you're grandiose. What you want to do is you want to start with yourself. So you want to look at that and go, okay, this is how I might be able to better the world. But I'm not necessarily capable of that right now. And a lot of people, more often than not, tend to think about how they might be able to better the world, and they go straight to that. And that's where grandiosity, and that's where pride comes in. And there are a few reasons for that. The first is we don't receive feedback about our grand, world-changing ideas, either ever or until it's too late. And so the problem with that is that we're wrong about almost everything that we think could be better in the world, because the world is an incredibly complex system, and no one person could possibly even comprehend a 1/1000th of what needs to be changed to make the world better. So if you go straight to trying to better the world, you skip the two most important things to better, and then you pursue something that's inherently wrong because you don't have any feedback and any way to stress test your ideas. And then if you happen to be able to implement those ideas, they aren't going to be representative of true good ideas enough to be good ideas. And so throughout your life, you're going to want to take these ideas and gradually make them more and more representative of the truth. And again, that's going to take almost like a accurate self-image, but like an accurate idea image. So you don't want to go straight into trying to better the world. You want to start with yourself. And that is a very humbling experience, because, like I said, you don't know what's wrong with your ideas about how the world could be a better place until way down the road, or until it's too late. And so you spend a lot of time feeling confident, feeling certain, and the biases do the work and the lens does its work, until it all shatters, and it's kind of like a pride and then a fall. Whereas if we start with ourselves, we have all these ideas about how we could better ourselves first. That's a thing a lot of people don't even start with, but if you start with that, you have all these ideas about how to better yourself, and you start implementing them, and then you're wrong about almost all of them. And it's like, well, shit, man, like, I thought I knew what I was doing. And so you're going to go through a very grueling process. You're going to use the accurate self-image to be a guide for this process. And you're going to go through the process of actually making yourself a solid human being, capable of directing your own actions, not reacting emotionally to various inputs, being able to do all the things that it takes to be a good human being. And that's a hell of a lot harder than most of society makes it out to be. And in fact, it's one of the hardest things there is to do. So you've got to do that first. Then you've got to start bettering your family and your friends. And then that is a massive task to uphold. And you think you know what's best for your friends, you think you know what's best for your family, you think if they would just listen to me, then they'd know what's up. But as in humility, once you experience people actually listening to the bullshit that you have to say, and then you realize, oh, well, I was wrong about all these things, then you realize how damn difficult it actually is to be a positive influence on the people around you. And then also to actually make those relationships healthier. And having healthy relationships, my God, that's a freaking difficult thing to do. And it takes a huge amount of work, and it requires, if you thought the accurate self-image process was rigorous, it requires something like that, except more intense. So you're gonna want to better those two things, first yourself, then those around you, and then over time you'll start to find a way to better 1/1 millionth of the world. But, you know, if as one human you can find a little teeny tiny aspect of reality and make it a little bit better, you're doing pretty good. And I think by bettering yourself and the people around you, in some sense, you are bettering the world as a whole. I guess by world I mean society. And so that's quite the task. But you're going to be humbled going about this, and the difference between pride and ambition is that ambition is doing what's in front of you to the best of your ability. So there's a very prideful perspective that a lot of intellectuals and college students tend to have, which is that manual labor is beneath them. And that's just stupid, because manual labor is an incredible form of work, and no individual is above any type of work. And so what can happen is you think that you're better than whatever kind of work that you end up having to do, and you can not do that to the best of your ability, and not see, pride will tell you, oh, I'm destined for greater things, but ambition would tell you that I should do my best to do this job to the best of my ability. And that's ambition, and that takes work each and every day. It takes showing up on time. It takes working efficiently and trying to figure out how you can do this job as effectively as possible. And it requires engaging effort in the moment, not dreaming about the better things that could come later. By doing this, by being the best you in the moment, you start to build a solid foundation off of which you can build, or you start to construct a solid foundation off of which you can build, so when you go to better your relationships and better your friendships, and you have that cognitive triangle intact, you can be successful in those endeavors, and you can be less lost while you're trying to figure that out, and you can have some experience with the process of self-betterment and with the problem-solving process and all of that. Then, once you have a good support base around you, and you start to better the lives of the people around you, perhaps you can take on leadership positions, and perhaps you can go on to actually be able to study the nature of society, and then use proper rationality in order to find ideas that are going to be beneficial to society in truth, not in theory or in self-rationalizations or in your intellectual's attachment to whatever ideas you came up with in the fucking shower. A really, really important idea in terms of purpose is that you don't confuse your idea of what's good with what's actually good. And so if you're ambitious, you'll be willing to muck through the pain that's associated with making that distinction, and with being able to recognize when you're not being a good person, and when the ideas that you think are so great turn out to be fucking terrible. Whereas with pride, you'll start to confuse yourself with the good, and that's very dangerous. And again, that's something that's really easy to happen when you don't try to better what's in front of you, and you go straight to thinking about all the things that's wrong with society and how your ideas would make it better. And if only the people in charge would talk to me, then society would be great. And there's certainly corruption that needs to be dealt with, and there are solvable issues. I won't deny that. But even the solvable issues when corruption is taken out of the picture are still wildly complicated. Finally, being ambitious in your purpose in life, or in the way that you're going to contribute to the world, starting with yourself and then moving on to the people around you and then moving on to society, you're going to want to get a solid grasp of proper driving forces and improper driving forces. And we talked about a lot of terrible driving forces throughout this course. But there are also some good driving forces out there. And as you go through your development of your accurate self-image, and you're looking at what drives all these different actions, you're going to gradually want to try and identify and recognize, okay, which driving forces were beneficial, and here's how you're going to be able to differentiate between the two. Bad driving forces are fleeting, and if they are able to carry you through to completion, then they leave you feeling empty. Good driving forces persevere, they stick around with you till completion, and upon completion, that sense of accomplishment is proportional to the amount of time that sense takes that sense exists in comparison to the amount of time invested into bringing that accomplishment about. In terms of purpose, a really good driving force is justifying your existence. And this is essentially the idea that we came into this world having done no work, having done nothing. We've been given, food, water, running water, which is great. It's amazing. We have these vehicles which take us all around. We have a society that isn't totally crumbling or isn't totally falling apart. So all that's pretty good. And there's a lot of work, and there are a lot of sacrifices in the past that went into bringing this society about. So inevitably there are things to be thankful for, and there are evil people in the past who've made reality worse, yes. But there are also really good people who put a lot of effort into making the world better, and you're inevitably profiting off of their efforts. And there's a degree of personal responsibility that we all need to take on, which is to justify why we exist, justify why we're here. And you start by making yourself better and making yourself deserve these things that you've inherited from the past. And then you better the people around you, and then you attempt to make society better in some way without inadvertently making it worse. But being driven by this almost sense of duty to justify your existence is a pretty powerful motivator, as long as you develop an understanding of why that is. And that's going to take some time and some experience, but pay attention and keep that idea of why should I justify my existence in mind, and justify that idea itself, and observe the world and see why that might be the case. If you don't think it's the case, so be it. But I think it's the case. Another part of ambition, this is kind of a side note that I'm just throwing in here. Another part of ambition, this is an idea that I haven't really grappled with entirely yet, but I've been thinking about it, and so I'm just going to throw it in here and see what you think about it. Part of ambition is the ability to inspire others. Because we've talked a lot about vanity and not evoking envy in others and having yourself sit comfortably beneath others. But there is a reversal to that, which is that there's something to admiration that can be motivating to others and that can be inspiring to others. And if you have the capability, the life experiences, and the accomplishments to do that, if you've overcome, challenges that others will likely face, and you can be a guide for others through that difficulty, then that could be something good to try and do or try and be. Now, I don't know if trying to be that is the way to get there. Perhaps it's a natural byproduct of starting with yourself and then your family and then society. Perhaps it's something along the lines of lead by example. But one thing that I've thought a lot about is if you never talk about your accomplishments or the challenges that you've gone through, as you might with trying to avoid evoking envy, then you risk not being able to tell the stories from your own life that could inspire somebody else to do something better with their own life. So it's an interesting predicament. I think there's a driving force there that matters, and you have to become conscious of that driving force. I think driving forces kind of exist, sometimes consciously instilled, and sometimes they work their way into the system. So I think it's possible to go about trying to inspire people, but there's this underlying driving force that is to evoke some sense of admiration or to be admired. And a part of humility would be experiencing the meaninglessness of admiration. And so perhaps over time, if you pay attention to those experiences which develop humility, you could be driven by that force, which is a genuine sharing of your own stories as a way to be inspirational and not to grab onto that admiration. But as a part of that, it's like any admiration that you receive or any of those implications on the self have to be relinquished from pleasurable thinking. So that's important. Yeah, I'm not too sure what I think about that, but it's an interesting idea. I think a part of inspiration, or at least within the same ballpark, is instead of telling people what you think they need to do, or at least this is a mindset to approach perhaps that stage of the bringing about the highest possible good that you can, the stage in which you're dealing with your friends and your family. Instead of being so arrogant as to believe that you know what's best for other people, you put yourself in the place of the student when helping others overcome their challenges, and you accept that you don't actually know what's best for other people, and instead it's like you're working with them in order to figure out what is best. And so as a part of that, it's like you're trying to get them to teach you what's best for them, and then you're kind of inquiring, would this work, and if so, why, and if not, why not? So that might be a part of it.